people that are coming online for a couple hours a day.
I think there's a legitimate worry that one day will cause a week's worth of earnings to be lost, which I think is
It's fair.
it's harsh, but it's also like there's a balance between upping the uptime number to something like 99% versus this kind of measure over the course of a week. But I think like
it's no days below 85%.
yeah.
And so versus they're saying like, well, I want to be able to be down for one day and still get partial credit.
Right.
I think a day is a really strong piece of that. So let's see how things go. If it's impactful and there's a lot of people to get dinged by this, then we can come back and change it and make it more fair. What about uptime requirements for those with multiple greenhouse dandelions? Those can only be online one at a time. Oh yeah, we're fixing that. I thought that's yeah. So I mean, if you have multiple greenhouse dandelions and then you plug one in and you turn it off and you plug another one in and turn it on, and you do that. That's not the intended behavior. You should have only one at that location and then have a different one. We talked this earlier today about the fixes for having multiple greenhouse dandelions on the same IP to be able to have them on at the same time. Do you want to give an update on it?
So not sure how much I will say, but we're basically working on a way to update those dandelions so you can have multiple dandelions in the same IP address. And that basically involves enabling a part of the IEPS functionality in those flowers. So it's part of an update we've been working on with BySales to make sure that we can get that working.
Okay. So the idea is one per IP, and then once you have the fix to do multiple, then you can put multiple. But you don't want to have like, oh, I have 4 and I do one from midnight to 6 a.m. and then another one from 6 to noon and then vice versa.
So when we're gonna roll out that, we're gonna let you know so you can plug all of them in at the same time and make sure it gets updated overnight.
Sounds good. So, and we can plug multiple dandelions on one IP now, but it has to. Is there some chats? There's
anything being shipped with the drop that we made for Cyber Monday and any Christmas sales that include dandelions will have the fix on it.
Okay.
It's just the old ones sold before those dates don't have that.
But we want to support them, so
Correct.
we'll have a process for them to
Update.
get an updates with a hand holding to make it happen. Okay. So coming to the questions, like it's an OTA for the existing ones and the new ones have it built in. How many per IP?
As many as you'd like, but use your common sense for deploying good cell networks.
Yeah, so this brings up another point that we talked about. We've been talking about doing handoff rewards, and I think Steve had an amazing idea of having different rewards as you're driving down 101, handing off from one cell to the other and making a continuous coverage area. And so we have multiple things that are coming on that. We think we're going to call them bouquets, which are basically a set of flowers that all act as one, and then do handoffs. So the handoffs are being tested. We'd like to get as much beta testing of these as we can before we launch them live on the network, but that's coming very soon. And once we do handoffs, there will be additional rewards for handing off to other flowers such that you then share a pool of coverage. And so if you do have 6 of one at your house and you're not doing handoffs, or if you are doing handoffs, then they all add on to the coverage. If they don't do handoffs because you're doing something weird, then you will not get the additional benefits.
Correct. And if we detect that you're doing too many handoffs, we'll also probably do something to curb that back. Because you don't want to be constant.
Well, it's not a per handoff. So just to be clear, so it's not that like every handoff you get
Correct.
some sort of a reward. It's that if these two flowers are able to do handoffs from them organically, then they will both benefit each other by how much coverage they're providing independent of each other. So the idea is like, how do we cover one contiguous area where you can have, continuous connectivity around the whole one, which technically will reduce the service areas of each individual flowers because they should be handing off to the next one, and that's what you want to have happen. And so we want to have a way where the validations from the flowers in your bouquets counts towards your specific validation hex coverage. We don't exactly know what that formula is. We're super interested in having feedback on that. One of them could be increase the coverage towards the maximum that you're allowed for your flower type by adding to more. So if you had a really successful buttercup next to you and you added camellia, they gave you two hexes coverage indoors. If you can hand off from yours to from the camellia to the buttercup and vice versa, then you would be getting full credit for your maximum hexes for camellia. That's one proposal. There's other thinking.
Yeah, but we also have to curb again people putting them in a closet and just putting a phone and handing off between each other. So we can detect that if you're constantly flipping between cells, that's an undesired behavior.
I think we're going to be, we've been working hard for getting that plus a couple other, nice features like phone call handovers and things like this that we'll announce later. But then next we'll come back to the gaming and enforcing of that. I definitely don't want to see any pictures of people. I don't want to know about anybody putting multiple flowers in their closets and trying to scam the network that way. I'll be very disappointed in this. All right. Good question. How many per IP? So infinity, basically. But limits, we should probably put a limit of
common sense and coverage.
Okay. I think the worry is an issue on the Pollen opco side or the mobile core side causing downtime that impacts weekly earnings. There's currently no real network monitoring tool with alarms or such built in the units as is. The way some of the enterprise deployers use MikroTik switches for this purpose, when will this be available on botnet? So we have an internal tools for that, for monitoring traffic drop packets and so forth.
But there's I guess there's two components to that. Is generally the mobile core being up as a service, which is independent of the flowers. So I need to set up a server so we can expose that to you.
Yeah, we need basically a down detector that's showing all the different components being.
And that's the general core being up or down, and then there's a second component, which is your flower correctly connected to it, or is it down? Because it could be that it's down because it lost connection with the IEPS, which is the proxy to get to the core. So we need to put in the botnet is that information where there's a network outage, and then hopefully device ways you can alert people. They get subscribed to email or a sort of text message to get alerted that something is happening. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so we want to have a pager duty, basically API, so somebody can put their own stuff and they can get there. I mean, that's ultimately where we want to get to once you get higher level of numbers. The reason for getting the 85 is to try to drive a just medium between. If you do a good faith effort at getting your flower working, you're going to be able to pass this requirement, and then over time we can make that more and more stringent as the tools for monitoring it get better and better. So you can go ahead. You were going to say something else?
Well, I think one of the hangups that people are having is on the botnets. They're worried that any of the statuses being on would mean that the uptime goes to 0.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is if the device is on and reporting back, we will count the uptime as being up.
Yeah.
Even if the MME says it's not connected or IEPS is down for a moment, the device actually being booted up and functioning is more of the uptime component than being connected to the network. Even though if you're not connected to the network, you're obviously not going to earn for the validations that are happening at that time. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know how you would catch the uptime. So you're seeing the uptime is being reported separately than
correct.
End user uptime.
Yeah.
Because I guess the flower reports to two different locations. One is just the management plane, and there's the core plane per se. So if the core plane is down, then we can also track that the radio is up but not connected to the core.
Yeah.
So there's an independent metric.
So there's two independent ways we could track that. Right now, the metric that we are using is coming from the management plane and not the core plane. So the uptime metric would be counting up the amount of times that your device is on and am able to report back to our management plane.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is actually independent from the control from the.
I think that the
core.
point of the community being like, we want the feedback on knowing how we're doing is very fair. So we'll need to.
I think we need to make it absolutely transparent as to what the uptime metric you have right now is. So I think we will be making updates to the botanist in the near future that will report that in a very transparent manner. Like it'll be like, you're up for this day or you're not, and you'll get that message straight from the botanist.
Got it. What's the timing on that?
It should be at the same time as all the release of the weekly features, which is we're aiming for Monday next week.
Monday next week. Okay. And you think the will they be able to preview what their past uptime has been by then as well? Because they're going to get a preview of the weekly earnings and
I could potentially make that happen. Yeah, I should be able to make that happen. Yeah. Okay.
All right, how much do the attaches change rewards in your test of the changes?
We will have a comprehensive blog post on that coming up in the next couple of days.
Give me more about what you mean by that.
Well, we're running the simulations of.
Oh, you want to say, okay, this is the, let's look at what would have happened last week had we been on scenario A, B, C, D. This we were hoping to do before, but we haven't been able to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still working it, but hopefully I'll have it by today.
Yeah, okay.
Today.
Yeah. So we know you want to be able to see what the outputs are.
Yeah.
From that. I agree the penalties should be incremental. I've had BC and MF offline before, and didn't know until a day or two later. I'd hate to lose an entire week of earnings for a missed day. Yeah.
Same theme.
No, it's okay. So these are valid.
But we're getting a lot of this, so I mean, it's something we'll definitely have to go back and.
We'll need to have alerts to do the things. That makes sense. Okay. Will there be future requirements for ping upload speeds as Helium is implementing? Intrinsically, a flower that is on the LTE hotspot is worth less to the network than one with fiber backhaul. Yeah, so we looked at that. We're going to be great. We grade all of the attaches and the validations as a way to doing that. And our view is, it's sure the one attached to fiber backhaul is better than on an LTE hotspot. However, what really matters is the throughput at which you're able to use the network as opposed to plug it into, right? To me, the fiber connected dorm room closet is less valuable than an LTE hotspot in the top of a location that people want to have and access. So, but if the throughput that's being offered is not sufficient, then we will grade that down. Right now, I don't think that's really a differentiating factor. I could see why you'd want to do that before you can actually measure the quality of the coverage, but the quality of the coverage is really important. Yeah, I mean, so some of the deals we're working on are going to have a quality of service requirements, and that will be evaluated then, and therefore your flower may not be selected to be part of the network if it's that bad. But if it's actually rebroadcasting, so there's an example where we had a site that did not have service. This was in Michigan, and somebody was able to set up a LTE hotspot connection on a really tall tower, and then put a Pollen tower there, and we were able to basically rebroadcast and kind of mesh off of the existing network that you would never be able to use as a phone user unless you were like 100 feet in the air. But by connecting to that and pushing it down, you were able to get connectivity there, and we think that providing connectivity where there is no connectivity is a key differentiator. So I wouldn't over-index on the fiber. We think that's not as important as potentially others are leading it to believe. It's still good. We'd like to do that, and we may differentiate against it. But I think that the bigger differentiation is like, what can the user see on their phone, and the ball will be as a proxy of that. And then the alternative piece of that is like, what is the signal strength of the other networks around you that you could get? And so we're going to start also doing the comparison of where Pollen is providing coverage that does not exist with no other alternative. Because clearly that's an area where customers are more likely and desirable to 1.5 pollen compared to areas where there is existing good coverage. One, and then two is doing the same thing with the pollen drops where there's users have indicated that they want coverage. Okay, honeybees and BB attaches being the same is a bad implementation. All right, I'd love to hear more about that. At the end of the year, it's coming fast. Got news on paid data. Yes, agreed on that. That's not what this point of this call is, but looks like we're on track for doing that still. Look, Christian, you want to give an update there? That's what we got to chat this morning.
Yes. So we're still pushing hard to get the pilot we were talking about going.
Like December 30th, but yeah.
It might be December 30th. So that's one. There's another one that we may have rolled out by then. That could be another candidate. We're doing a pilot in a small town that doesn't have coverage right now. So less likely that one will come through, but it's another one in the hopper. But we're pushing hard, even if it's just one customer paying data. We want to be able to
and we're thinking of a plan that's going to be something like you get a fixed amount of data for free, and then you pay a per gig up to a certain amount, and then from there it's unlimited. And we'll have a post on that at a follow-up date of what the details are there. Is there a hold up shipping Blink units from the first drop ordered in November and still waiting? I think there's one person that's missing one, and it might be Naifunk. And so we do. We talked about this today, and
I think everything ships.
It's in transit on there. So I know there was one that was ordered on the 8th of November that got shipped like last week or something, and it hasn't been delivered yet, but it's in process there. I think that's your question. If not, follow up, please. Okay, but you can have 99% uptime in a month but earn 75% because there was a power outage for 4 hours. Yeah, I mean, if you're down and the customers can't use you, then they can't use you. I mean, that's kind of the point of what we're saying here, that all of the telco towers have battery backup plus generators. We're not expecting you to do that, but we're expecting you to, if you don't provide that, then you won't, get that. Ringinator. Okay. The less work on the people out there driving around and validating. The less work is on the people out there around driving. Running the computer reports is nowhere nearly the same amount of effort as having 500 people out there driving. Yeah, I think you're reinforcing our push of saying weekly, and then have a script that's checking your flower uptime being correctly on. So
yeah, and also like we want to enable you guys, but we're also like working hard on this, right? Like we're like building up the infrastructure, we're building up the necessary tools, we're building up many different parallel efforts on the technological side in order to make this happen. So yeah, I realize like we can run computer reports, we're doing that, but like at the same time, we are also thinking about how to make the network better and like trying to plan and optimize for that. So please be patient and bear with us.
Yeah. The person I pay to validate my flowers is losing their job because of weekly validation. The week before Christmas, this pollen hate Christmas. GK, she's getting a nice bonus. So no, I mean, I think that the point here is that this is not a jobs program. This is a network development program. It's also not a crypto hype and pump and dump program. So it's focused on providing the most coverage and the most users we can get. Do we have visibility into the uptime metric you're using for the reward calc?
Yes, it will be on the botnest, and we will also make it open via API. That will happen as soon as we can possibly happen. We're working on it.
Why not daily and weekly percentage? 85% per day or 95% for the week?
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
we could definitely look into that.
Yeah, that could be a good idea. So you could do up to 85 on a day, or X.
Yeah, and that really actually might mitigate. That might do a good job of mitigating the concern people have around the daily uptime stuff too. You could also do a weekly uptime, right? We could also just do, hey, like if you're up for 95% of the week, then we'll
That's what he's saying. That's what he says.
Well, he's saying right? We could do just the weekly one if we wanted to as well. Right now, we're thinking of it as a per day basis because a 95% uptime over the week means you could be offline for, I don't know, like what, 8 hours, 9 hours at a time?
5% a week.
Yeah. So yeah, good math.
Math geniuses like
So that is something that we're concerned about, right? Like we don't want people to be offline for major periods of time. So maybe the check is that if you're off for an X amount of hours when you lose it, that could also be a check, right? So there's many different ways to check it. I think the feedback that we're getting is maybe the 85% per day is too draconian. We'll discuss that and maybe have a counter proposal or something that comes out.
That's fair. I don't see if percent too much time. That's well below the standard uptime for legacy networks, as long as this doesn't include the problem that Pollen's having. Pollen blink by selling juice. Yeah, that's fair. We talked about not being there. We're just like 20 minutes behind reading the questions. So, any big picture updates? I think we gave a couple of big picture updates on that. Sally, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, there was kind of these questions came that we wanted to address as far as strategies. So the first one was, can we please get clarification on what Pollen is trying to accomplish short term in 1 to 2 years? Are you focusing on building coverage to fill in gaps that current carriers have and plan to offload data? So I was thinking you could give a little bit of a broad update, or I could.
Well, why don't you?
Yeah.
I
think right now, what we've talked about, and hopefully you've been following our blogs on Medium and some of our social, but we're really focusing on building in areas that need coverage. And some of those areas include, remote or low-income communities where there is a real lack of connectivity. So this right now is a huge focus of ours right now. We obviously thank our communities and people we're working with in order to make that happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that the priority one is we want to have service to real people. They don't have an alternative, because then they'll use the system and actually want to there. The next priority below that is contiguous areas of coverage where there are people that would like to use the service but don't have to because they have another choice. And so that's where somebody wants the privacy focus, or they want to have Pollen for any other reasons because they don't like the alternatives that they have. And then the least interesting is just having radios disconnected in areas where there's existing coverage. And so that's in terms of the ranking of where we see the value add on what we want to do. There will be some specific targeted geos where some of our partners want us to help them cover. And so there might be additional reward boosts. We talked about that with some of the hex multipliers. And so that probably will come early next year as we know exactly where that comes out. Moonflowers lose IPS all the time. That's a you question. It's a question. Moonflowers lose all IPS all the time.
Oh, we're checking on it.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
We did have an issue in the past, but we thought we fixed it. So now it's being reported again. So we're double checking.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Moonflowers have been nerfed down on the network. Technically, the spec says 45 dBm. Support says all flowers on the networks operating at 29 dBm. Do we know what's going on with that flowers?
I believe the sensor is 20.
No, it's 47 dBm RP is the max limit. And the flower itself can do 47, which is 1 watt plus a 17 dBm dBi 10 gig.
Can you copy that?
Yeah, sure. That's at 5:29 p.m. Do you want me to send it?
Is this the SAF thing?
And
It sounds like a fast thing, but yeah, our favorite partner of the system. Do you want to say something?
I have one more thing.
Please,
One more question.
jump in.
So we had a question. The recent discussion between Anthony and Chris at Hello Orange appeared to indicate a roaming partnership between Pollen Mobile and Dish Wireless. Anything you can share on this? And what I can say is,
Jumping the queue. Is this
No, this is
No.
EMA that we
Okay.
like.
yeah, we about the strategic.
Yeah, great.
Just one more. What I'll say is you guys we cannot comment on this at this time, but we definitely will keep you posted as big partnerships come to fruition.
We love all of our MNO friends,
We do. We love them.
especially the ones with mustaches. I'm sure everybody's got some mustaches. All right, MOSOs with 45 ERP would be insane. Okay, yep. Why is this? Okay, those of us on Starlink providing coverage in the middle of nowhere should have different metrics applied than folks that can get their fiber lines.
I think that echoes exactly what.
That's what we're talking about. I mean, yeah, I guess it's like 15 minutes old, 20 minutes old here. Yeah, the objective is we want to have, now if you're providing coverage in the middle of nowhere and there's nobody else to use it, then it's not that valuable. But if you're providing coverage in the middle of nowhere where there are people using it, then it's obviously much more valuable. And we want to think of how to make that, make it. More people liking the 85 or 95. When will HBs be used for validation? We're working on that. It's not super clear. There's a couple things. Well, there's to be answered a different day. We are looking at how to do this. We would like to do this. This would be the best path forward. There's no good updates to share right now, other than we share your excitement for this, and we're looking into it. As long as Bactanus actually shows up, you'll get credit for the uptime. Okay, yeah, I think it's fair. Your question came after that one was made clear. Yeah,
Just going back and forth.
yeah, of course. Okay. Max is working on the updated 21st century of. Oh, sorry, that's not a question. Yeah, I mean, it says I'm a slow reader, so it's different kind of. No. We love Max and all of our community members. It's good feedback. It makes us sharper and stronger. Just like all the bugs they were squishing on Bicels and Blink and Moso firmware. I'm surprised they were selling radios on any real networks before, because there's crazy. If you can't do the hand, like all the bugs we're fixing, it's like who's using this shit?
No, for real.
We're
We're paving the way for everyone else.
That's true. But at least we're like, it's good to know that we're actually trying this stuff.
We're actually like
Yeah.
working it.
Daily walking validators, winter weight. Yep. Well, they can do weekly. They can do longer routes. They can do coverage more.
We do it on a
There's no
different
reason to
trail every day.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Worth UPS is pretty cheap. I agree with that. When we stake hexes,
When can we stake
hexes? Yes, I think this is going to come with bouquets, or maybe after bouquets, because the idea there is that you want to be able to participate and grow the network per se. Right now, we're really individually creating coverage zones, and there's kind of some, you'll detach from one and reattach to another, and it's annoying. But like once it does a handoffs, you are effectively two parts of the same node, and we want to like get more tight in to make that happen. So
Well, and I'll also say like in the current implementation of how we've talked about staking, staking rewards would be at odds with handover rewards, and we don't want that to happen. We want both of those to work synergistically and to build off of each other. And so that's why we're waiting for handover rewards to become realized before we talk more about staking rewards, because the mechanisms that are at play for both of those would be butting heads if we didn't engineer them in the specific.
that's a good reason why we're decreasing the attach validation. So the attach rewards, because over time, if you're combining all the attaches from your bouquet into your mount, you need to have that clamped down.
That's too. Yeah, that's a good point.
There was another thing that I triggered here, which was big picture on. I forgot it was some. What did we talk about today? There was a. Okay, I'll come back to you in a second. All right, tell me if the flower goes down 4 hours, no negative. Yes. 160 over 168. Having a great day. I love that you're having a great day. I'll put a little heart there. This got very serious reply, but I was joking. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. It seems the rewards are not tailored towards the short-term goals. The short-term goal meaning of providing coverage. Unclear.
They elaborate more.
They elaborate more. Okay, you guys are trying to build a cell phone network while also using pay to play mobile game mechanics. I think you need to hire a mobile game and app designer. Or yeah, we agree with you on that. And add to the HBBB app. Yep. For example, if I drive around, hit all 100 hexes for a day, there should be a bonus, just like in a mobile game for finishing daily quests. I think you're really onto something there. Yes, 100%. Especially then there's streaks and all kinds of other things that go on there.
Yeah, I mean, to comment on that too, it's like that's exactly kind of the path that we're taking with the apps. It's just that we're trying to build the network at the same time we're building the apps, so they're not all happening all at once. But it's engineering resources are limited, but we're moving through each one of these pieces as fast as we can. Technically.
Yep. That's right. The bouquets could be really interesting, and they could also be potentially disastrous for those that are not in the areas that are connected. So we'll have to. We're going to be turning on the handoffs first to see how that works before we, launch bouquets, obviously. And this is the update that I remember now. So we're going to start phasing out the AGWs and getting everybody onto Greenhouse, which I think will help with the uptime. And so we'll probably start this week and go as long as it takes to convert. We think we're going to convert the buttercups first. And so I think that will be that's going to be
that's a huge enabler for us on many fronts. It'll enable all the handovers to happen across all the different types of flowers that we have. It'll enable us to track more closely what the buttercups are doing on the greenhouse. It'll enable us to build a lot more of the reporting functionality people are asking for with respect to real-time attaches and stuff like that. So I think moving to the greenhouse from Magma has always been the overall plan, and we're finally at a place where we can start migrating legacy flowers over. So super excited about that.
Yeah, we think that's going to be a big change, and that's going to be a big positive change. So we're doing a new Explorer launch soon, so that's a preview. Some of you guys are in beta testing. That will be great. Just a SaaS discussion. Okay, so who's started doing DIYs? What's going on? I didn't follow that part. They weren't selling radios to anyone else. Oh, I see. Amazing. Sorry. Well, hey, at least we're doing that. Oh, we're going to have a new partner coming soon. That's going to be amazing. But that's be great. I'm very excited with
Good tease.
Yeah. It's good. These were not a DIY first partner. It's on the radio side. There was a Magma announcement that Meta is shutting down their connectivity. Does that impact the user work with Magma? Yeah, I mean, we've been looking at Magma kind of early on. We know some of the guys from the team there. We understand kind of their commitment to the Linux Foundation. I think the work that they've done is fantastic and great. We obviously use something very different than Magma because we can do things that, right now the Magma code base doesn't allow, right? And so we'll be, there's a couple more preview announcements that will show handoffs, calls being forwarded through and a couple other things like that, which I think will be a pretty big differentiator. It's sad to see Magma go, but I'm not really concerned by the impact of what that will do to what we're, what's the roads? Where we're going, we don't need no roads. This may be showing my age a little bit, but all right, plan to do more frequent drops, consistent supply of BB, radius and BB is a limiting factor. Yeah, I think we want to start to get away from the drops in the next year and have it more continuous so that it's easier to get replacements and spares and sell from there.
The store's open right now.
The store's open.
Is the store open right now? Oh, cool.
Right now.
All right, awesome. There you go.
Shop.
Great. Yes. We fixed some of the supply chain issues there. All right. I asked to clarify what I meant. I was referring to the short-term goals of providing coverage in places where there isn't coverage. The reward incentives are currently geared providing coverage where there are a lot of flowers in the same place with many HBs, BBs, and potential paying users, often places where there are already good coverage from telcos. If offloading agreements are on the way, then we don't really want this, but actually want to provide gap coverage. However, gap coverage doesn't currently earn much.
So, I mean,
Yeah, you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So we hear you with the current placement of flowers, and that's why we're really pioneering these pilot programs that we've been talking about in order to get handovers working, because we think that that's a key differentiator that will allow these coverages in dense locations to also be valuable. But then also we are going to use another mechanism that we have talked about in the past, but we haven't implemented yet, which is the hex multipliers. So what we'd like to do is kind of figure out, based on our analysis, where there's regions where there isn't good coverage from any of the current telco operators, and we want to incentivize those locations in a much higher rate than is currently being incentivized, such that it is valuable to go put a flower there, and it is valuable to prove out coverage in those kinds of locations. So that is forthcoming, but we think that we have a couple of plans in place that would address these questions, and we are working towards validating those plans in proof of concepts that we're currently running.
And let me add something that I think addresses a lot of these other questions, like the Colton's asking about, like density in cities and things like that. We don't 100% know exactly what the answer is going to be, but density in cities will be part of it, especially when we have Pollen as your primary mobile service, right? We want to have density in cities where handoffs work, and you're mostly offloading on Pollen. We also want to have coverage in places that doesn't have coverage, right? Because that's part of the beauty of this model and small cells and all the open source stuff. So
Yeah.
It's kind of all of the above.
I think the gap, so it's always all the above, but there's a different ranking. I think to me, the number one rank is we want real paid traffic on Pollen. And, we've looked at all of the MNO offerings out there, and we believe that it's a substantial value to be able to also have their users on board, but the timeframes that those are likely to come in, either for us or others, are longer than people want to see that are purchasing hardware. So we think that the value is to have actual coverage with actual users, and those come in two different places. Having a city covered, like it could be like LA or San Francisco or something. We're definitely not going to cover the whole US anytime soon, but we think that we can provide coverage in certain areas where people do operate in. And we think that the areas where there is no coverage is the highest value to getting a small number of subscribers. It also gives us a pretty good partnerships for US MNOs that want to extend their network. We do have good coverage, and maybe I'm tipping too much here, but there's good offloading capabilities for cities that have lots of foreign visitors, because foreign MNOs would like to roam on Pollen above roaming existing other MNOs, because they're there's a price difference there. So we could, which is a different play than the coverage gap, and I think the coverage gap is going to be really difficult. So think of your Home Depot, Starbucks having an indoor unit, and then having one of the existing carriers that has service in the area choose to use your radio, either through Pollen or somebody else, where they then prefer to use your antenna because they have better service than they provide themselves, even though they do provide some variability service there. That, I think, is a very long bet. It's going to take a long time to shake. If you do provide coverage where there is no coverage from them, then it's a much easier sell for them to provide that, especially if you're providing a whole area coverage as opposed to a couple of different sites on that. So this is really important. We really think that that's the thing that we want to do. So we would encourage like metros and valuable off the grid location. Go ahead.
Oh, and I was going to say there's also like a transitory nature to some of the metro stuff as well. Like I know we had someone who covered the World Series, right? And I think like something like that requires much more throughput than a typical day using the typical MNOs or the typical MVNOs. So like there are situations like that where we think that Pollen could spring up and support a connectivity situation where the MNOs are getting spammed or there's a ton of people on the network all at once, or you need more throughput because of your indoors. There's many different scenarios for that, but like it's not just a it's up and it's working type thing. It's also like a event-based thing. It's also like a time-based thing. Like we want to be in places where people can use the network where they don't have it now, and that's like all of the above.
That's fair. All right. Should we avoid covering major metropolitan areas? Is carrier offload a big priority? Domestic carrier offload is not a big priority unless we have non-overlapping coverage. Foreign carrier offload or roaming is a priority for the major metro areas where the users are going. So they're a little bit different, but I think that makes sense. Thanks, Max. We all love you. We have thick skin. We won't get offended. Is it better to build a denser network with overlapping flowers in a couple cities or spread nationwide? Wouldn't it be better to have contiguous coverage in San Francisco, Houston versus 5 different hoods in Salt Lake City? Correct. We already answered it. Yeah. Sorry, I'm still agreeing. Yes. That's we agree with you 100%. Okay. Will our BCs get converted to greenhouse still be able to function with a stem plugged in? Yes. Yeah, so you're not going to require anything to be undone, but it will no longer be using the
I know people have thought that PCs in crazy places, so it's not practical for them to go anything.
Yeah, so there is no change needed unless something goes wrong, but the AGW will be effectively at that point
Just
pass through.
Pass through.
Yeah. We might have a recycling program to give you credits for something else afterwards. Are you guys considering doing handoff rewards? Yes. Handoff rewards are a good proxy for UE density, and if a flower handles a high frequency of handoffs freeway, it should be commensurately rewarded. Yeah, we agree with that. I don't know if we're going to do a per handoff. I think there's going to be a handoff for basically merging the value of the adjacent networks.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Or
like
class.
similar to the bouquet concept that we kind of touched on a little bit, right? The idea would be that if you can hand off to other flowers, all those flowers could be operating as one mega flower, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the mindset that we're coming from. But also, if you show more traffic because of handoffs, that will only lead to you getting rewarded more, right? So that's not to say that each individual handoff is going to count. But the more handoffs that you can produce with nearby neighbors, and the more consistent that the data coverage is across that area and space, the more you can expect your rewards to go up for the handover reward when we introduce that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we should have a handoff reward channel that we should make, and then have all the topics on that in there, so we can kind of filter through that easier. I'm getting it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thoughts on incorporating future voice or E911 SMS, so forth, so we could tell deployment partners. So we do handle that now on Greenhouse through roaming partners. We don't do it natively on Pollen, but we do have a solution that that you were testing. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we and this is getting a little ahead of ourselves, but when we roll out the Pollen native service, we do have a solution that we really like for.
I don't know if they're going to be contingent or coincident in time, right? It's like when after the Pollen service is launched, you will offer that later, not at the same time.
Yeah. It's a good clarification. Where we'll be able to provide phone numbers, we'll be able to support messaging. As Anthony said, we can already handle voice offload for other partners. So and we can do all this in a very light way that doesn't force us into the full kind of common carrier paradigm under the FCC rules and stuff like that. So still a lot to figure out and test there, but it's stuff we're very actively working on, laying the groundwork for the future.
Makes sense. Is the pollen
And United One and all that stuff will be handled. So yeah, it'll be a full kind of robust voice solution that looks and feels a lot like a centralized phone service, but
we
it
think the centralized phone service is actually an app on top of the pollen network. And so that's why we differentiate those two. So anybody that wants it is going to be able to get it, but it's not something that you just get and you roll out as a base. If we build our own wisp on pollen, is it a wasp? Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's with,
Where's the ace?
it's because it's
Bug.
the bug.
We can back her.
Insect. It's very different. Like bug. It's like
We'll think of an wireless access service.
finding area low coverage. There needs to be some kind of bonus for keeping BBs and HB running in all layers and record all carrier RSSI strength in all non-pollen. Yes, that's definitely something that we're doing. The Honeybee app does that to some extent, but we want to do more. I also qualify for FCC grants for providing where there is not any kind of coverage. Yes. So we think that there's a good overlap there for having pollen be potentially the out-of-the-box solution for people deploying to get federal ATP, I think is the name of the program.
Yep.
That's that.
You could mention there used to be the water cooler.
But
That's an interesting fun fact.
yeah, you guys.
Yeah, so we've looked a lot into this in addition to the federal funds that are available. We also looked into where there's licensed spectrum not being used, and there should be some sort of squatter's rights, like you use it or lose it. That's generally how the FCC approaches licensing spectrum. That actually used to be a thing. Like you could show up to an area if a license holder wasn't using the spectrum, you could use it and like demonstrate you're using it, show they're not using it, and go to the FCC and be like, it's ours now. They got rid of it like 20 years ago, not surprisingly at the behest of the carriers. So we're thinking about how we can help spur a groundswell movement to try to push to bring that back, because it's a real thing. And obviously folks like us could benefit from that. So fun fact.
William says Spectrum capture the flag, which
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, and so we don't want to tip our hands too much on this, and I don't want to talk about squatters' rights yet, but I think that could be a big movement for expanding the CBRS type licensing to other spectrum there, and that's when things get really, really interesting. But please don't like run with this until we get our
Don't go break the law.
No, I wasn't saying that. I was saying like let's not tip our hands to the other incumbents watch this program for a reason. So let's get speaking of incumbents, like I don't know if you guys knew this, I realized recently that T-Mobile and Sprint, that merged. Sprint actually, stood for Southern Pacific Railroad Internal Networking Telephony, which is a pretty interesting etymology from that in terms of how OG some of these guys are on that. Anyway, on that note, I think that's all the questions. We had a couple FAQs that we were going to read and go over. I don't know if we want to do that or just call it. We should read it? No? Okay, I'm getting
It's
we're
time.
good to go.
We can address those another time.
All right. If there's any more questions, you know how to reach us. Thank you and have a great week. And actually see you next year.
Is this our last one?
Yeah, before 2023.
See you in 2020, community.
We should have done.
We're going to be a lot of blog posts between now and then. But
We
it's
will
gonna-
definitely,
as a
yes,
call.
on the call. Watch for the content.
Happy Festivus.
Happy Festivus.
Festivus for the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
Pollination across the nation.
I like
Yes.
it. Yes, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Nation. So,
I feel like
coming for you.
it lends it. We need a wrap. We need a pollen wrap.
Yeah, go ahead and get us started.
Yeah. So what about pollination across the nation? The Emancipation Proclamation. Wow.
We need a better mic. This is like a really nice mic. It's like we have it's the blue called.
We need help with Christian's wrap.
We do need, yeah.
It's the legit blue condenser mic, guys. But no, yeah, we'll get another one.
We just not using it correctly.
It's probably just it's very directional.
Does that
I
work
think
better?
it's meant for to stay in one place and
It has a mode that you go. It's on Omni.
It's on Omni.
Yeah, it has a thing.
You can switch it Cardtoid Omni.
All right, if you guys want to stay on, okay, this is test 1, 2, 3 of mode 1. 3 talk.
Hello, hello.
Okay, this is mode 2. Okay, this is mode 2. Talking now. Is this better?
Hello, hello.
It's bad. Two way
It's
better.
way better.
3. This is number 3.
Hello, hello.
Option 1.
Here's that. And then 4. This is number 4. 1, 2, 3.
Testing 1, 2.
I feel like I'm at the eye doctor.
4 back.
Okay, 3 or 4?
We got 4 bad. We got 4. We got
We're
2
back to-
better. 2
We're back to
bad.
2, which is what we've been using it as.
Zeus Dog says it all sounds the same to me.
40 report says upgrade our backhaul. You're joking, but we've been having internet issues here, so maybe that is the problem.
Yeah.
No, that's not what's happening, but we can do that still. All right.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Thanks, Andrew.